You know the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover? Well, I think this also applies to you can't judge a book sometimes by the first in the series, because oh man, does this kind of break the mold. Today we're going to be talking all about The Great Hunt. This is the second book in the Wheel of Time written by Robert Jordan. This is a book that really astonished me, and I have to say from reading The Eye of the World, and I did kind of like it, but also at the exact same time I had a lot of gripes about it. I felt, it's very not an impressive book. Oh man, once we get to this book, The Great Hunt, ooh, I think it took everything that I said. Robert Jordan just had like a premonition, started writing very quickly because I love The Great Hunt. It fixed everything that I hated about The Eye of the World, and I can see now why The Wheel of Time is so important to a lot of people and how much it is groundbreaking. I can actually see it within every page of this book compared to the first book. Yeah, this book is really different, and I like everything about it for the most part. Why don't we get into the review? Because I have a lot and a lot to say. So, when it comes to The Great Hunt, I think it does a lot of things correct, especially when it comes to a sequel. I think for me, what it does really well is it doesn't fall into the sequel tropes. Yes, there are tropes for sequels. Usually, when it comes to a sequel, this is mainly for me applying to movies or even books in general, is it happened again? Nope, didn't happen like that in here. And I find that when it comes to the trappings of what makes a sequel, is that a lot of times, I think this applies mostly to comedies, is that because it's funny, they have to do the exact same thing again, but bigger. Look at Blues Brothers 2000. Well, I mean, it couldn't be worse. What about Kindergarten Cop 2? Or what about Ghostbusters 2? Oh wait, I kind of like that until the Ghostbusters get their proton packs and it becomes less interesting. But you can see what I mean. I guess I'm not really shouldn't be applying comedy to this. But when it comes to this book, with the example of this is they didn't just take the first book and kind of that quest and that same formula and just do it on a bigger scale. No, this feels like a completely different type of adventure and it actually does the most important thing that a sequel should do. You already are introduced to the characters, you're introduced to the world already, and you can already, pretty much get off that preamble stuff and go right into the adventure, which for me, I really do like. What is the plot of this book? Well, it follows a couple weeks after the events of the Eye of the World, where we follow Randall Thor still as he has kind of not sure what he's doing with his life. He kind of is trying to figure out and process kind of what he's going to be doing with his life. Does he want to be a pawn? Does he want to still have magical abilities? Is he just someone that just wants to run away and go back to his little farmhouse in his little Shepherdsville of the Two Rivers? And this is kind of where the adventure is thrust upon him again, but this is kind of where the first book is kind of everything, it's like happy accents. This is more like the damages and the repercussions of the first book trickle into this book. He doesn't really have time to leave. He does get cold feet, but also at the exact same time, what kind of thrusts him in this adventure is pretty much his primary characteristics, which is he is a loyal person to his friends, because in this adventure he now has like this magical horn, and his friend Matt has this evil crack dagger, or I guess it's a magical dagger that if he doesn't have, he'll die. Well, both this magical horn that is so magical that if you blow it, it will bring the, heroes from all over the world that are legendary to this one place when you blow it. And that has been stolen, same as with Matt's knife. And now Rand, Matt, Perrin, and the entire gang that we saw from the first book now kind of have to go their own ways and kind of split up when it comes to the narrative. They have to follow the horn, whereas when it comes to Egwene and Yennev, they're going to Tarvalin to become Aes Sedai. And this is where the adventure kind of is interesting, because we're not just, here's the adventure, oh boy, we have our fellowship, our chums and stuff. Doesn't work like that. And I really like this adventure because you're seeing it from two different perspectives. You're seeing it from, I guess, the traditional fantasy perspective of Rand and the gang going off and looking for stuff. But then you also have the, we're going to magic school to learn magic things when it comes to Egwene and Yennev in many ways. And we get that. Now, do these plots come together? Is there a huge battle at the end? I think that's more of the raffle you have to read to find out, because by the end of this book, I couldn't put it down till I finished it, and by the end, I closed it. And this is a case where I didn't know what to do with my life, and I really do enjoy that. I should talk about the pros of this book. I think the pros of this book, if we compare this to the first review that I had, all the stuff that I complained about has now become a strength. I think Robert Jordan has really done an amazing job kind of with taking this world and really expanding on it. And most importantly, his prose have improved tenfold, which I really like. It feels more snappy. I think that's what I like. I'm a person that likes snappy prose. It doesn't have to be super flowery or anything. I'm the person that the wall's blue, the curtains are brown. I don't care as long as you talk about the deep nature of things. And Robert Jordan does this really well, especially when it comes to his prose here, as well as I think the biggest thing is that he's kind of toned down his clothing descriptions a little bit. Not much. I mean, you can't help it with this ornate obsidian shirt of tea that is passed down from thrift store to son. But it still happens in that way, but it's still toned down. It feels more part of the world rather than it just being there in many ways. Other things that I really liked about this book that I really, really, really do enjoy is the characters. Oh my gosh, did I care about these characters so, so much. I think everyone on this adventure, from Randall Thor to Egwene to Nynaeve to Moraine to Lan, from Perrin to Matt to everyone on this adventure, everyone fits here. No one feels like they're not a part of this quest in some way, shape, or form, or they have to play a part in the narrative. Which for me, I think is some of the best parts about this book is that I think what Robert Jordan does really well in this book is that when it comes to the eye of the world, you spend the majority of that book following Rand's perspective, and it just feels so stock. But in this book, the POVs change in a way where every character feels different. Everyone actually feels like they have a personality. They aren't just, hey everyone, I'm just Rand's friend. I'm here on the adventure because I'm forced to be here. Nah, everyone has a problem. Everyone has a conflict. Everyone has in-person fighting. It's actually quite refreshing because I've been rewatching a lot of the original Star Trek, and I guess that's the Gene Roddenberry thing of maybe I'm so used to everyone can have interpersonal conflicts to figure out a solution, but here I guess I shouldn't be really using Star Trek for this, but it's kind of refreshing now to see people fighting and kind of having their own, oh my gosh, self-interest for themselves a little bit that kind of falter in many ways, and they see what works for them compared to just being a pawn or being a red shirt in this, which for me, I really, really do like about this book is that everyone feels like a character. Another thing that I really liked about this book is, again, Robert Jordan's so good at fight scenes. For me, I really like how he writes his fight scenes. There's a lot of weight to them, there's a lot of spatial awareness, and more importantly, there are stakes. Oh my gosh, every fight scene in this, or every character that Brand has to murder, or someone gets murdered, it actually has a lot of weight to it. I actually can see a lot of parallels between this book and I mean, I know Robert Jordan served in Vietnam. I'm seeing a lot of Vietnam parallels as well, and I can see how this book is pretty much an anti-war book in many ways. It is showing the horrors of war and kind of like what happens like when you have to do something horrific, and you do it, or do you question it before you do it, or do you not do it? And I think there's a lot of POVs that go into this, especially when it comes to the Children of the Light and how it's really weird. Like I'm sure there's probably deep dives into the whole this book series and kind of Robert Jordan's trauma when it comes to Vietnam. And I, I, I mean, obviously he's no longer with us, but I can only imagine what he went through, and him and those countless people that went through that conflict. But it's one of these things. Like when I read this book, it's such an interesting take on kind of war, because it isn't war's awesome. All the main characters question even killing, and it isn't like the tropey thing of should I or will I, but it's like if they don't, if they try to kill me, I have to kill them, and we have to figure things out. Which when it comes to these fight scenes, they feel real, they feel gritty, and that's what makes them so enthralling in many ways. And I really do enjoy that. Now, when it comes to the cons of this book, I do have a few. I think the biggest thing that I didn't like about this book is actually how the POV changes were actually incorporated. I was so confused because normally when I think of POV changes, I'm looking in between, okay, there's a chapter, the chapter ends, and then you follow a different point of view. Whereas when it comes to this book, I think all the POV changes just happen so quickly. There isn't really a cue to them. I mean, I guess there's like a break within the text, but even then, I would be reading, and if I'm really invested into this person's POV and then it suddenly changes to someone else, it's you have to stop. You kind of like turn the car around. It's like the thing in Billy Madsen. Yeah, throw that clip up.
I'll turn this damn bus around. That'll end your precious little field trip pretty damn quick, huh?
It feels like that. That's like the best analogy that I can put about this is that it just feels so jarring. It took a while to get used to. And even still, I had a hard time with this where I would be invested and then I'd have to stop and then reread major sections because I wasn't following the same character again. And that's kind of the biggest problem with this book is kind of that. I wish Robert Jordan would incorporate something different or his publishers or something would add some lines of text or something just to show like, oh, it feels like a fade is happening. You're going into a different point of view. This thing happened as well when it comes to the Stormlight Archive, the ending huge battle sequence in that book when it comes to Oathbringer does the exact same thing. And I've had this problem before. It might just be a me thing because I'm not used to kind of that style of writing, but that's just something that I've noticed. Another thing that I have that isn't really, I don't know if it's a concern or it's just me, and this is something that I think I should put out into the ether when it comes to the Wheel of Time, is that you got to take notes in this book. I was taking some notes because sometimes I felt like this was a history lesson where they would explain things and they would never have that character that would be like, what's this or what's that? It'd be, who is this Arthur Hawkwing? I mean, obviously there's a glossary in the back. I know they talk about him a lot in the first book, but there's things in this book that if you're not paying attention to within this, you're going to have a hard time, which I have a feeling that I'm going to be taking notes and keeping them in a Word doc. So when I'm reading more of the books, I'll have a better understanding of the world. This is something that I've noticed. There isn't like the reader insert character. So this is a book series, especially with this one, where it took me a couple reads to get into it and kind of having I didn't stop and then start, but sometimes I would have to reread passages because I would be confused about certain things. But for the most part, this isn't a big complaint. I think my biggest complaint is the POV stuff. Now, the things that I think are so good about this book is that I think this also rips through the misconception. The first book does have a lot of Lord of the Rings elements to it, and I know people have talked to me about this and how that was just the style at the time, especially in the early 90s, late 80s of writing fantasy. This book series is kind of breaking that mold, and I'm really liking this world. I really love things like the politics of the White Tower and kind of now having a fun conspiracy because this book opens up with a really great prologue with pretty much an evil shadow government. Like we're getting into the fantasy deep state, which I kind of think is kind of cool. And now I'm like paranoid that everyone's like a dark friend. And I really, really like this. I like kind of the mysteries that Robert Jordan's setting up. There's a lot of clues and a lot of things you can speculate. Again, it feels like a mystery story at times. For me, I love that. I eat this stuff up all the time. I love all the infighting and all the things that make you speculate. Is there something more to this, or is this you have to take it at face value? And I really kind of like this. I think for me, a lot of the stuff that I really liked about this book is kind of the court politics, especially when Rand and the gang are kind of in a Game of Thrones situation. I think this is really great when it comes to that. I can see how it's going to expand and kind of how the whole world's going to break in both a political sense, a magical sense, and I'm sure an economic sense. And I really do like all that stuff. And there's a lot of great character moments that I'm not going to spoil in this section, but there's a character in this that broke my heart. And there's a lot of moments in this that do break my heart. And by the end of it, I can't wait for more. I actually already have the audiobook for The Dragon Reborn. I'm going to hit play the second I finish this taping so I don't spoil myself. I am excited. This was a fun read. I am so excited. I can't wait to keep going throughout the series. Yeah, everyone, I'm hooked now. I can see why people find this special. I'm probably going to read this through to the end now because I kind of want to know what happens and what's going on, because in the end of the day, that's what makes a good book. I think wanting to know what happens in the end, or even wanting to know what goes on this adventure, because it's very much, if you boiled the story down, people are looking for this horn. They're going through the woods to find it. Do they find it? Will they find it? Are there fake outs and things along those ways? But this book does it in such a weird and unique way where the adventure, I guess it's the old saying, the journey beats the destination in many ways, where it's the destination certainly does beat this journey at times, but the journey beats it all the way like tenfold, and I really, really do like this. What did you all think of this book? I really liked it. I'm excited. I can't wait to hit play and go from there. I think that's kind of the fun thing. It's the spinning of the wheel. I think I'm being weaved into a pattern. I think my brain's melting because it's over 100 degrees outside. So I am excited. Well, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you like this video, maybe consider subscribing down below. I would really appreciate that. Well, everyone, thank you all so, so much. And like always, everyone, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everyone. See ya.